All right, it's time now for the Wiltfong Whiparound with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. And Steve, hopefully going to pop you up on screen here in just a little bit to remind the people that once again, I was left out of the memo to wear our black 24/7 polos, but that's all right. We'll power through. We'll start with five-star EDGE Colin Simmons. You reported earlier this week that he has quite a few summer trips set, both unofficial and official. The fun officially begins this weekend in Miami, but what's on the horizon for the rest of June and into July?
Yeah, after Miami, he's going to take an official visit to Alabama, and he also has an official visit to Texas for June 23rd. So that's Bama June 15th, Texas June 23rd. He also has an unofficial to return to Oregon June 20th, and an unofficial to get back to Texas A&M July 28th for their big end of the summer pool party bash that they host annually. And his mother, Monica McCarley, tells me that he wants to do some more officials during the season. She pinpointed LSU and Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon also got one of those official visits. Coming into these trips, I continue to like LSU. That's where my crystal ball is. I think they feel very comfortable in Baton Rouge, love the culture, love the staff, the program trajectory. Feels like home every time you talk to them about LSU. That's kind of what they say. Texas has been a mainstay near the top. Monica said that she loves the coaching staff at Texas. I know that Colin and her, they love Coach Sark. They love Coach Banks. They like the trajectory of Texas's program. They like it moving to the SEC. So Texas is another school that's been near the top of the list. And then, look, this Miami visit is intriguing because the Hurricanes are literally on the short list for every major defensive line prospect in the country. Simmons is one of them. And Jason Taylor is a big reason why. Taylor impressed the family when he visited in the spring by watching Colin's film with him, an NFL Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever play the position, giving him feedback on what he could do better. And it's hard for Simmons to play much better with those 33 tackles for loss, 22 sacks, and 45 quarterback hurries en route to a state championship as a junior. But he believes that he can be coached up by Jason Taylor. So big visit for Miami this weekend, and more on the Hurricanes coming up later in this segment.
Maybe we anticipate a little Spider-Man meme with Jason Taylor if we want to go throwback with them. Another defensive prospect that's really elite right now, Aaron Scott from the state of Ohio. Steve, the number 3 rated corner in the country. He recently dropped a top 5. He's mapping out his official visits. He's got Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Tennessee high on his list. What's on the docket for him, Steve, beginning this weekend?
Yeah, he's at Oregon this weekend, Michigan next weekend, and then Ohio State to wrap up the month. And then I think he goes into decision mode. So those are the 3 schools that I'm looking at the closest here. Oregon's a dream school. He's excited to get back. He was there in April, but a lot of coaches weren't there because they were at the NFL draft. So he's excited to spend more time with them. He's already clicked with Coach Demetrius Martin. He thinks that's a guy that can develop him. Wants to learn more about the program, bringing his parents out there, and that's big as well. My crystal ball is on Ohio State for him. They get the last visit. They certainly have a great shot to land the number 1 player in the state, the chance to play for titles for a program that develops DBs at a high level and play in state. That's very exciting to him. But this is no slam dunk for the Buckeyes. As I've said on this show and on our message boards, I continue to believe Michigan's very much in it. And I could see Michigan winning this recruitment. Steve Clinkscale's done a fabulous job. Scott told me he's heavy on Michigan right now, and he feels like this visit will let him know if that's the gut feeling for the school to be the one he chooses or not. But he loves their defensive scheme, loves the way they press man, loves what they've done the last 2 seasons. Michigan has a great chance of winning this recruitment and beating Ohio State for a second time this cycle after landing running back Jordan Marshall earlier from Cincinnati.
I know Buckeye fans are waiting bated breath to hear more about Jeremiah Smith. That's something that we, of course, promote in the show, but I'm going to make you wait a second and ask you real quick to go ahead and hit that like button if you have not already. We have a lot of people watching the show, but less than half of you, I know, have hit that like button. It's so easy. It's going to be the easiest part of your day. Just go ahead, hit that tap. All right, it will be buzzing in Buckeye country this weekend. The headliner is Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star wide receiver. He is committed to Ohio State, but that has not stopped him from taking visits elsewhere. So, Steve, how important is this weekend for Ryan Day and Brian Hartline to really lock down this commitment and maybe allow the fans to take a deep breath?
Well, I feel like Jeremiah Smith views these official visits as something that he's earned the right to take through his hard work, to go through the process and get a chance to get wined and dined and go see some schools and take some officials. And so he took one to Georgia. He took one to Florida. Now he's back at Ohio State, program he's been committed to for a long time. And it's a school that checks every one of his boxes. Great relationship with Brian Hartline, program trajectory, great offense. receivers dominating in the NFL draft year in and year out. And until someone close to Jeremiah tells me that they think he's on flip watch, I'm not worried that he's going to leave Ohio State's class. Now, I will say, anytime you take a visit, gives those programs a chance to make a pitch. There were people that spent time around him at Georgia that felt good about Georgia's chances long term. Certainly Florida, he's been there a couple times. And the Gators are fighting the good fight. And then you got Miami and Florida State in there as well. But Ohio State, I still like where they stand with Jeremiah Smith, the jewel of a terrific class so far.
The star power doesn't stop with Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. They'll also host 5-star offensive tackle Brandon Baker and 4-star wide receiver Jeremiah McClellan, along with a couple others. Steve, where does Ohio State stand with these elite talents heading into their official visits?
Well, for Brandon Baker, 24/7 Sports #1 offensive tackle, I like where Oregon and Miami are positioned coming into this visit. He also has an official visit scheduled for Georgia later in the month per our colleague Greg Biggins. And Biggins talked with Baker after his last visit to Ohio State in the spring. So the Buckeyes probably in about that 3, 4, 5 position coming into the trip. We'll see what happens. But Baker told Greg on his last trip he really enjoyed his time there, the overall energy and atmosphere, spent quality time with the coaches, met some players, saw the stadium, did the campus tour. So looking to get back around Coach Fry and Coach Day and company, and certainly Ohio State's had a lot of success at that position in the NFL draft. So we'll see if they can make a move here. You know, Ohio State, I think they're in the top 2 for Daniel Cruz. He named his top 4 today. He was on campus last week. Texas is certainly the other program heavy in the mix. And then Gerby Lambert visiting next weekend, who I think Ohio State's got a great shot at, but they'll take their swing at Baker this weekend. And then Jeremiah McClellan, crystal ball favors the Buckeyes, was just at LSU. Oregon's in the mix. I think that Ohio State's closing in on putting the finishing touches on this receiver class that includes Smith, Mylan Graham. I like where they stand with good counsel receiver Elijah Moore. Now they have Jeremiah McClellan on campus this week, and they'd love to close that one out as well.
Elsewhere in the Big Ten, Matt Rhule and Luke Fickell hosted their first big official visit weekends in their respective new spots. So how did things go at Wisconsin and Nebraska?
Yeah, we talked a lot about USC and Clemson earlier in the week, rightfully so. Penn State got some buzz. But Wisconsin had as good a week as anyone in college football. They landed 4 commitments. They rise to number 15 in the 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings, and they're trending for several more visitors from what was like 16 official visitors on campus. But they landed offensive lineman Kevin Haywood and Ryan Corey out of the state of Pennsylvania, Vernon Woodward out of South Florida, and then defensive lineman Hank Weber from Tennessee. Those are program changers if you ask around Camp Randall Stadium. Yeah, I think that with Woodward, 6'2", 180-pound, physical defensive back that can play against the run. He's athletic, physical, checks all the boxes for what Wisconsin's looking for at the DB position. And Kevin Haywood's one of the jewels of the class. He's 6'8", 300 pounds, a big, long, athletic player that chose the Badgers over Auburn, Penn State, and USC, among others. I think he's a punishing blocker with good feet and twitch on film. And he's full of traits. I think he's a guy that could be instant impact for them, and they're counting on that. Corey is also a destructive interior offensive lineman that can play guard or center, like the way he dominates at the point of attack and blocks at the second level and runs downfield. And then Weber could play a couple different positions for them on the defensive front. But moving forward, Darian Dupree is one of their most coveted players on the board. Running back from Chicago, Mount Carmel, 5'10", 195 pounds. I logged the 24/7 Sports crystal ball for Wisconsin. They're battling Illinois, Michigan, and Missouri. But ever since Luke Fickell and company got to Madison, they've targeted him as one of their most coveted prospects, regardless of position. I think it's really clicked for him, and he sees an opportunity with Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi leaving after the season, perhaps, to be an instant impact player for Wisconsin. And then Blair, help me with my man's name from Honolulu Farrington, 4-star edge. How do you say it?
Anelu Lafaele.
Well, you crystal balled him a couple days ago. I joined you today. His film is electric, man. Major pass rush ability, elite first step quickness. I think that Wisconsin is the one to beat for him alongside you and our Wisconsin insider, Evan Flood. And then one more guy I want to talk about is top 247 defensive lineman Benedict Ume, who also is high on Duke, Penn State, and Stanford, among others. He's one of the strongest players in the class, easily a 500-pound squatter. He's from Canada. He's also a terrific student. I think Wisconsin set the bar with his official visit. It was his first college visit with his dad. He loved the culture. He loved the coaches. And I think that Wisconsin is starting to trend for him going into his future official visits. And then Nebraska, they had some top targets on campus this weekend as well. Ja'Cory Barney out of Miami Palmetto. I have him crystal balled to the Huskers. A receiver that Andrew Ivins is high on, a twitchy guy with a lot of upside. That's Matt Rhule's MO, developing guys with traits. Led by assistant Evan Cooper. The Huskers are going hard in South Florida. Another that they're in good shape for is Amari Sanders from Gulliver Prep, who just played his first year at 50 tackles, 2 interceptions in 8 games. Also a double-digit scorer in basketball. And then Nebraska, they hosted several prospects from the Lone Star State. A name to highlight is Mario Buford, a defensive back who's going to announce his college decision in a couple hours. I like where Nebraska stands with him as well.
Yeah, Nebraska, Wisconsin coming off huge weekends. And when we're talking about big weekends, Steve, it's always reasonable to expect that Miami will be up there. You had Josh Pate out there this week. Messi is coming to Miami. You got the NBA Finals. Everything seems to be coming up Hurricanes right now. They've got a few 5-stars. Colin Simmons, we mentioned earlier. A few other defensive linemen and edge rushers will join him, including Dylan Stewart, David Stone, and Aiden Breland. How is Miami faring with these 3 5-stars, Steve?
Well, Jason Taylor, he's been NFL Defensive Player of the Year, been NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year. He's a Hall of Famer. He has all the traits to be the best recruiter in the country. And it's resonating. His personality and resume is resonating with these recruits. And I think Dylan Stewart is coming off a good visit to Georgia. I could see Dylan Stewart in Miami's class. He was just in Coral Gables a few weeks ago. He's been there several times. He told me he's loving Jason Taylor. He's liking Coach Guidry's defensive scheme. Coach Cristobal's made an impact on him. And he talked about the great offensive line that Miami recruited last year. He'd love to go up against those guys in practice. And same deal with David Stone. David Stone raved about Jason Taylor, the chance to play for a Hall of Famer. So David Stone, coming off a good trip to Florida. You got Oklahoma, Oregon, and the Aggies in there for him. But Miami gotten him on campus several times this spring, and he's high on the Hurricanes. A lot of it to do with Jason Taylor. And then Aiden Breland, this is also a return visit for him. According to our Greg Biggins, he's got trips coming up to Georgia and Oregon, just coming off a really good trip to Texas A&M. But I get the feeling Miami's near the top of his list as well.
All right. In addition to Messi, Josh Pate, and the Nuggets, Miami will also host 5-star cornerback and current Georgia commit Ellis Robinson. Now, it's actually not his first trip to Coral Gables since committing to the Dogs. So I know you're shaking your head there. So are Dogs fans out there. How are Mario Cristobal and his staff doing to try and flip him?
Well, I was shaking my head in agreement. That's not his first trip.
Nope.
And if there's one school I'm watching to potentially flip him from Georgia, which I think is going to be very hard to do. Like, I think it's going to be hard for people to flip Jeremiah Smith. Nothing's impossible in recruiting. He's been to Miami a bunch. Him and his parents loved it when they were there earlier this spring. They're coming back this weekend for an official. And there's people around Miami that think that they have a great shot at him. And then his teammate, running back Jarrett Gibson's also going to be on campus, a return trip. I viewed Miami as the biggest threat to Texas. Texas getting an official at the end of the month. He had a really good official to Georgia last weekend, but Miami maybe hitting a potential home run with Jarrett Gibson this week. Miami, they're going to have a great class. They're a top 10 watch for sure. Maybe top 5 this weekend will have a lot to do with how far they go in the recruiting rankings when all's said and done.
All right, Steve, before I let you go, we got a question from the chat here. So who is this? Kenneth Williams asking, any idea where Maryland stands with Aaron Childs, with him set to take an official to College Park this weekend?
Yeah, I think that they're on his short list, obviously, with him taking an official visit. But I love where Michigan stands with him. Michigan working on a top 5 class themselves, one of their top overall targets. I think Michigan's been the team to beat for a while. And that's how it sits going into the official visits. Florida also trying to make a push for Aaron Childs, but I think he's Michigan's to lose going into the officials.
All right, good to know. Thank you for that question. A reminder, the only way you can ask is if you subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel and also hit that like button like Steve Wiltfong is asking you to do. Steve, thank you so much.